Long before the Founding Fathers gathered in Philadelphia, before the Constitution was written, and even before the first English settlers arrived on the Atlantic shore, this land held ancient stories. Stories not of a new world, but of an old, deeply rooted one, shaped by time, nature, and human spirit. To understand the United States of America, we must first turn back the pages of time to an age before America. Part 1. The First Americans. The first people to arrive on this land came not by ship, but by foot, crossing a land bridge from Siberia into Alaska over 15,000 years ago. These were the ancestors of today's Native Americans. Over thousands of years, they spread across the continent, forming diverse cultures, adapting to harsh deserts, thick forests, and frozen plains. These societies were not primitive. They were innovative, spiritual, and organized. In the Mississippi Valley, the Mississippians built Cahokia, a city of tens of thousands, with vast pyramidal mounds rivaling the size of the Great Pyramids. In the Southwest, the Ancestral Puebloans constructed multi-story stone dwellings, water canals, and astronomy-based architecture. Meanwhile, in the Northeast, nations like the Iroquois created a confederacy built on diplomacy, shared governance, and collective defense. Long before European kings had ever heard of these lands. Part 2. Culture, Belief, and Trade. These civilizations worshiped the land, the sun, the spirits of the animals. Their spiritual life was woven into every part of existence. There were hundreds of languages, trade routes stretching thousands of miles, and systems of governance ranging from tribal councils to hereditary leadership. The image of the nomadic Indian is a narrow myth. In truth, indigenous societies were builders, traders, farmers, and thinkers. From the Great Plains to the Pacific Northwest, each region had its own brilliance. Part 3. The Arrival of the Europeans. In 1492, the balance began to shift. Christopher Columbus's voyage, though he never reached North America, opened the floodgates to exploration and exploitation. The Spanish moved swiftly through the South and West, establishing missions and colonies. The French explored the Great Lakes and the Mississippi. The Dutch laid claim to what would become New York. But it was the English who would ultimately define the early shape of what would become the United States. With them came weapons, iron tools, strange clothing, and diseases. Smallpox, influenza, and measles decimated entire native populations. Within a century, up to 90% of indigenous people in some regions were gone. It was not a war of conquest alone. It was a biological catastrophe. Part 4. The English settlements begin. In 1607, the English established their first permanent settlement, Jamestown, in present-day Virginia. Life was brutal. The colonists were unprepared. They starved, suffered, and clashed with the nearby Powhatan Confederacy. Then, in 1620, a different group arrived, the Pilgrims, seeking religious freedom. They settled in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Helped by the Wampanoag people, they survived for a time. But even here, tensions would rise. As more settlers came, they brought not just homes and families, but fences, laws, and a sense of entitlement to the land. The native world, diverse, ancient, and deeply rooted, was under siege. Part 5. The 13 colonies take shape. By the early 1700s, 13 English colonies stretched from New Hampshire to Georgia. Each had its own culture. The North, full of merchants and Puritans. The South, dominated by plantations and slavery. The Middle colonies, diverse and growing. Though loyal to the British Crown, these colonies were forming their own identity, separate from the empire, shaped by the New World. Beneath the surface, tensions simmered. Closing, a nation before the nation. Before America was a republic, before freedom was declared, and before flags were raised, there were people here, people with stories, civilizations, hopes, and heartbreaks. This was the land before America, a land of nations within a continent, a land of survival, of spirit, and of change. In our next episode, we'll journey into a time of protest, rebellion, and revolution, when the 13 colonies begin to question their king and dream of independence. Call to action. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and continue the journey through American history with us. Leave a comment below. Whose story do you want to hear next?